Hello, everybody. My name is Ray. Welcome to the Evangelical Dark Web. Tonight, we're going to do some post-game coverage of the SBC23. We did a lot of color commentary on this channel regarding SBC23 and just providing live coverage. I've done some post-game analysis, and this time we're going to bring on some guests in a video version of a post-game analysis. And two of the guests that I have on today are Christopher Cunningham, a pastor of what church?
First Baptist Church in Bloomington, Texas.
First Baptist Church, Bloomington, Texas. Is that close to Farmersville or?
No, it's we're on the coast, southeast part. We're in between
Corpus Christi area.
Yeah, but right outside of Victoria.
And then Dr. Jared Moore, I know him as basically the guy. There's a handful of people that have probably done more research on the whole side B theology issue than myself, and Jared Moore is definitely one of them. You have a whole book on that, don't you? Or is it coming out?
It's coming out this year. I wrote my dissertation on it.
Okay, so you're probably more research than me on this issue, and it'd be fun to have you back on to kind of like compare notes and just see how Big Eva went gay or something like that, because it's pretty interesting how far back some of this stuff goes. Like, you look at the Gospel Coalition and stuff, they were very early adopters on that issue. And that it also leads to one of the good reasons to have Dr. Jared Moore on, is that he introduced a resolution to kind of tackle this issue and sort of where it was going. And that did not go over well with the messengers. And I guess we'll provide some analysis on that situation. Well, I wanted to be a little bit more prepared, but I was doing some reporting on a story right before this live stream, so I didn't have any chance to prepare any overlays or lower thirds, but we will proceed nonetheless. But first, I want to let you know, smash that like button. That's how you can help the live stream increase its algorithms and stuff like that. And also, we'll be interacting with live chat and taking some questions, because we got, two people who are on the floor, me who watched every minute of this convention. We got a lot of perspectives, and I'm hoping to get some of your takes, because we definitely have some controversial territory to tackle tonight. And that's going to be, the Mohler Gambit that I think is going on with the SBC. So anyway, I also want to let you know, if you want to support Evangelical Dark Web, the least you can do is like this video and subscribe to the channel podcast if you're new. The most you can do is support us over at evangelicaldarkweb.org/join. That's our Patreon like system. So other than that, we'll be doing some live interaction. But if we look at the schedule for the SBC, it seems like there was a theme that emerged early, but this was kind of weird, because I thought that the Southern Baptist Convention put their best foot forward first. So they led with the International Mission Board and even the North American Mission Board. They led with a lot of their missional activity, which isn't what they did last year. Like, I don't know if the order is, static, but it seems like the order changes from year to year, what exactly they do at what time. But they led with the International Mission Board in the first session, not first event, but it was in the first session. And that was one of the things that seemed to have set the tone that everything's all good here at the SBC. And then you get Bart Barber's address, and it's like, if you have an issue, it's because you're the issue. And that seemed to be the theme of the Southern Baptist Convention 2023. Your thoughts on that? Chris, you go first, and I guess we'll do kind of a round table.
So this was my, as a pastor, this was my third convention to go to. And I always thought that the sending ceremony, was the day before all that. There's not a lot, honestly, I never felt like there was a whole awful lot of attention given to that before. And so it was strange to see on the first morning that that's the first thing going. But I felt like I kind of liked it at first, because I always felt like that anyone that's a messenger, I feel like they should always be in the sending ceremonies be there. It seems like a lot of folks don't really get there until it's time to vote for the president. That's when the place is really packed. But but as far as the theme goes, I felt like uh, uh, Bart Barber, just listening to what he had to say in that very first when he's giving his address, and I felt like he's playing on people's emotions. He's talking about how his mom just passed away the day before. I mean, what are we gonna do? Not vote for a guy whose mom just passed away? I mean, that's I mean, I don't like that, but for the man. But I'm sort of thinking like if my mom just died the day before, I'm not at the SBC. But it seemed like if you're in opposition, not only are you the problem, but I mean the language was used in such a way to make it seem as if we're actually agents of Satan. And that really was the tone. Like if you just want some kind of transparency, and I'm not even talking about doctrinal purity yet. I'm just talking about some transparency. If you even bring that up, oh well, you're just trying to criticize. You're trying to bring others down. You're focused on the negative. Like you just said, like we're the problem for asking questions, and it was a nonstop attack. At least that's and you could tell that's how it was going to be from the jump. I mean, just right off the bat, at least in my eyes.
Dr. Moore?
I think Bart is a company man. I mean, he was talking about me and guys like me that speak against him publicly on Twitter. Bart, back when Ed Litton was revealed to be a serial plagiarist, Bart took to Twitter to defend plagiarism. He defended James Merritt when James Merritt defended his homosexual son preaching. Merritt was on Twitter praising his son for preaching the gospel, and people were responding to him negatively, and Bart went to defend him. Bart is a company man. Bart hasn't always been a company man. I served with Bart back in 2014. He was the first vice president of the SBC, and I was the second vice president. Fred Luter was the president. And, Bart's very likable as far as personality wise. He did a great job.
He's very funny and charming. He does well.
He did a great job moderating. As far as, he was able to encourage folks, and but he is a company man. He has changed. He's not the man he used to be. And I think he's been bought and paid for, and that the price was cheap. I mean, that's my opinion of him. And going after, they use the sermons that they preach from the platform, they use it as a bully pulpit. And usually they do it in the pastor's conference, some too. This year they didn't do that because Dickard, isn't a company man like they are. And so, I think that the platform has an agenda, and the thing is, I don't know who these are. I don't know who's really pulling the strings.
I mean, I've always said that
convention.
Kevin Ezell is a phantom menace because he has the purse. So, it's kind of this were his candidates. You look at Ed Litton was a NAM guy, and he usurped Al Mohler. So I thought they kind of had this biumvirate thing going on between Kevin Ezell and Al Mohler. Al Mohler had the personnel, and then Kevin Ezell had the money. So they kind of had a biumvirate, but it seemed like, eventually someone's going to get screwed in the power struggle. And I guess it was Al Mohler in 2021 when he came third place on that first round ballot.
Yeah, I don't know who's pulling the strings. You can't ever get these guys to talk publicly. During the conservative resurgence, kind of the rule was every conservative is an ally. So they would never say anything negative about one another publicly. And that is continued. And so, they badmouth each other in private, but they don't ever come out publicly and say it. So we don't ever know really what's going on or who's on whose side. We can kind of see that Mohler's on the outs. All the former SBC presidents presenting Merritt's motion together, which it's a motion against, in my opinion, against what Mohler had argued. It's essentially the same motion as what Adam Greenway wanted to offer the previous year when Mohler spoke against him at the mic.
Yeah, the Mohler thing's very interesting. We'll get to that in a second. But early on, it seemed like conservatives were dominating the microphone in that first session of offering motions. It seemed like conservatives dominated that microphone. So
we sure did.
So I do want to commend that did you make a motion in the opening session?
No, I did not. No.
Okay, I wasn't.
I largely just was. I wanted to spend more time really listening this year and just trying to pay attention. I felt like the conservatives. I thought they were starting off really strong by actually getting up, getting to the microphone, waiting in line, and really just speaking on behalf of on issues that are important to us. And so I had a little bit higher hopes than what came above it, but they really, I don't know, like I felt like it started strong, but just didn't really seem to pick up traction.
Well, it's because they killed the mics.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about the resolutions committee. Do you think that, because this is what I wrote in the article, because I'm occasionally poetic, and I wrote that New Orleans is a city known for all sorts of shenanigans, and Super Bowl 47, I believe, was when the blackout happened. A partial blackout in the stadium was used as a pretext to delay a game for 30 plus minutes when the San Francisco 49ers, led by Colin Kaepernick, were getting completely owned by the Baltimore Ravens. I live in Maryland, so I'm very familiar with that Super Bowl. But so that was New Orleans in 2013, and then 10 years later we have two microphone outages that happened at the same time during very opportune speaking times for the messengers. Very coincidental.
What happens is, so everybody's there early to get to a mic, and so they're three deep on the mics, primarily conservatives. Well, if they kill the mics and they only brought out two wireless mics. They got like 20 wireless mics on the stage. They bring out two, and they set them in different spots.
Remember, at first they were like passing it, like there were people running the microphones. It's like that was nuts. Sorry, that was crazy.
They should have brought out 10 wireless mics. They already got people that are standing, like working at those mics, helping people. And all they had to do was why not bring out 10 wireless where people are already standing in line? Instead, everybody had to get back in line again. And it was just, it did kill the momentum, and other people were able to get to the mics ahead of time, people who weren't in line or weren't first or second.
So what issues were they going to speak to at the resolutions? Because you got resolution 1, which was kind of innocuous. Resolution 2, I think, should have been amended to call for pastors to repent for their divisive decisions. I think if you had amended resolution 2, because I thought that was we don't want COVID accountability resolution. So I thought that's what the undergirding context is, because the resolution itself, okay, it reads pretty fine, but the undergirding context of that, because there's always a context to it that it's speaking to, was the COVID accountability stuff that was very prevalent in 2022 and a little bit also in 2021. So that's what I thought that was speaking to. And then resolution 3 was on AI. I being blunt, I don't think most people would have been able to intelligently articulate a problem or
Right.
to that resolution. And then resolution 4 was the biggie that I am surprised had no real opposition to.
It's because they called the question quickly. They call the question, it ends discussion, and they vote. And the thing about the SBC, man, most of the messengers want things done quickly. They get exhausted quickly.
They don't have stamina. It's weird.
Well, I'm not there for vacation.
Right.
I'm not there for vacation. I'm there to see that the SBC is using God's money wisely, like as stewardship. I'm not there for a vacation. And I think that some are there. They use it as a time of rest, relaxation, and
partying,
and,
perhaps.
But I mean, we have time. Like, it's over at like 5 or 6 at the latest. You can go goof off for 3 or 4 hours, right?
Yeah, and that's kind of, the astonishing thing is you get very little business time to do a business meeting, because even the reports, it's like, okay, you allowed one question to the ERLC, right? And then
maybe 2.
Okay, maybe they got 2, but they got very little questions in on a lot of these reports that were given. I mean, Lifeway had 3 questions, and man, did Ben Mandrell completely screw that pooch. But very little time is actually spent on business during the SBC, which I always found was odd. There's a lot of pageantry.
That's why we're there.
There's a lot of pageantry, but very little business. And then the microphones suddenly cut out during an important session, which messengers would be more likely to reach the microphones. And it was a resolution on illegal immigration that promoted amnesty. So
right.
I am surprised by that.
We were going to amend that. We were going to amend that to where it would be more acceptable and, not arguing for amnesty.
Yeah, I mean, because people got to keep in mind, any time people start talking about DREAM Act and stuff like that, that's amnesty. That is the minimum threshold of amnesty. There's the maximum threshold, which is everyone gets citizenship or whatever. But even the DREAM Act is still amnesty and is a compromise that, and most of those people, not most of those people, but most of their congregants probably wouldn't support that, if it's framed that way.
Right.
No. And especially so, like where I live, literally just not even 2 hours ago, I'm on my way back home, and the police are chasing illegal aliens through the field, like 3-4 miles from where this church is located, and so we're being like this church right here where I'm at, we are really experiencing the consequences from this. And so, I come back and I tell them, and I'm putting all my notes together to present to the church what all I witnessed there and my thoughts, and they were just shocked that they feel like it's just a complete just tossing away of our nation's laws, and they just don't. They feel like we don't matter, and the church has been there for 100 years, and this is something that's just so. It's it's obvious. Like why would we be granting amnesty? Like the whole thing was just absurd, and I feel like again, like how you were saying, like those really important. Like there's some really important topics, and there's still a lot of stuff from the last really since 2020, and it seems like anytime there's somebody who is speaking out or wanting to make amendments, trying to get something done, there's some type of way, whether it's shutting off microphones or just calling to question, and I don't know if that was crazy to me. That resolution 4 that I've never seen it. I don't know. I don't even know what to think. Like, and you're listening to the people around you, And it's almost like I don't know if they just don't have any idea what the stage is driving us the narrative towards. It's like, are y'all just don't understand this, or do you not care? I don't know. That was strange.
Yeah, and that especially became more prevalent. The apathy, I guess, the perceived apathy, I thought became very prevalent when you're discussing transparency in the North American Mission Board. Now, there didn't seem to be a whole lot of people in the room during that portion of the business session, because I think that was right before a lunch or something. But that, like, those people, they didn't want to vote for amnesty, or not amnesty. They didn't want to vote for transparency for the North American Mission Board. I'm just stunned by the margin that they didn't vote for that. So I think next, because we covered the resolutions committee report, the first one at least, the Mike Stone election defeat. I'm kind of curious as to your thoughts on that. Just to lay my own cards out, I remember reporting. I had this paywall premium article that I wrote discussing the 4 people that I thought would be ran against Bart Barber. None of them were Mike Stone. One of them was Al Mohler, which I guess we'll get to in a second, but none of them were Mike Stone. It was like Lee Brand Jr., Mike Law. I thought was a more of someone on the board than running the guy who, and then Tom Buck was the other one, which I don't think would have been a good candidate. But that's a hot take for another day. But none of them was Mike Stone. They decided to run the guy who lost in 2021, gave the speech to the losing candidate in 2022. And then they thought, it's like that SpongeBob meme, want to see me, go over there and back, want to see me do it again. Like, one Beta O'Rourke, kind of vibes I'm getting from running Mike Stone, because I think there's a lot of baggage with him. Particularly him suing Russell Moore looked bad, and then him, quitting on that lawsuit looked even worse. So I thought he was a terrible candidate, and then he ran a terrible campaign. I thought it was Mitt Romney campaign that got Mitt Romney results. And then one of my predictions for SBC23 was that Bart Barber would cruise to re-election. I didn't think there would be a runoff. So, but I didn't think it would be 68%. But so
that was crazy.
What are your thoughts on the election? Do you agree with me that Mike Stone was a bad candidate, or is it the messenger's fault? Like, what exactly went wrong with that election for the conservatives?
The nomination speeches. Willie Rice did not give a good nomination speech. If you go back and listen, Bart Barber's nominator was like, everything is awesome in the SBC. Everything is wonderful. It's great. And Willie Rice was doom and gloom. And people who don't know the candidates, most people they're not on social media. Most Southern Baptists are not on social media. They are low information voters. They don't know who Mike Stone is. They don't know who Bart Barber is. The majority of the people in that room.
Well, they probably know who Mike Stone is because he's given the speeches the last couple of years, but
I mean, I for real, there, if you go back and look at how many people were there, it was like, what, 60%? It was their first convention or something like that. It was,
really?
it was, yeah. But go back, it was the nomination speeches. Willie Rice I thought was the perfect guy to, because he was against Mike Stone. He was more part of the platform. He preached the convention sermon a couple of years ago.
And he gave a very angry sounding sermon. Critical race theory is a real thing, but you know what else is a real thing? Being a jerk is a real thing. Like that was his convention speech, and it was cringy at the time.
Yeah,
but he brought that same energy, and this time it didn't go over well because he wasn't with the platform.
He was preaching against Mike Stone when he preached the convention sermon. I mean, people like Mike Stone who were complaining about the SBC. And so he flipped to Mike Stone's side. And so I thought he was the perfect one to nominate. He just did an awful job on the nomination speech, in my opinion.
See, when I found out that Willie Rice was going to be nominating him, like, for me, it took any win that I had in the sales, it just took it out. Like, for one, anyone who's been paying a little bit of attention knows that he was a progressive candidate a year ago. And if they know that, they know why he's not why he was ultimately backed out. They may not know the specifics. I don't think he really did anything to cover up sex abuse, but all they know is he's tied in with that. And you've got a progressive who is somehow had to withdraw his his name for nomination because he was something in his church with sex abuse. Oh yeah, let's have him bring me on stage. Like, you think you're gonna win any votes with that? Like, and then I honestly felt like Mike Stone did a better job nominating Tom Athkell last year than Willie Rice did nominating and he never mentioned the financial nothing.
Was that Mike Stone gave a great nominating speech. That was the analysis that we had at the time on the live stream of the convention that we were doing. So yeah, I think you're right about that. The speech, again, he sounds angry, and then you're right to point out when you know who he is. If he has a high name ID with you, it's not a good pick. That's an interesting thing that you point out because of the whole Deacon Gate scandal.
He is mad. He is angry, and he's angry, but he's not angry for the same reasons I'm angry. Oh, he's mad at the platform, but he's not mad at them. He's just mad that all of a sudden he can't have his hand in the cookie jar. That's why he's mad.
He could have gotten past Deacon Gate and won the nomination, I think.
I think they made him resign. They made him.
I think that, yeah.
Well, again, keep in mind, they made Ed Litton back out, and Willie Rice was immediately announced as a candidate. And then Willie Rice backs out, and then less than a week later, Bart Barber was the nominee. And I was joking, and me and a couple other people in discernment were joking that Bart Barber is probably going to be the nominee at this point. And lo and behold, that is exactly what happened. Like, we were joking about this because it's like, okay, now they're down Willie Rice because they nominated Willie Rice because he gave the convention sermon, so that's why they did that. But Bart Barber's been the most loyal simp. He was given the resolutions committee position by Ed Litton, so simping ain't easy, but for him it is necessary. So that's how I feel about that. But now they got Dean and Sarah. They got Dean and Sarah that they can throw in there. Griffin Gullidge they can throw in there. They got a bench. Todd Unzicker they could throw in there maybe. But
hey, that guy right there, let me tell you, that man right there, we ain't heard the last of him. I think he'll be nominated very soon. I really do.
Oh, I hope not.
And then Mike Keobone.
These are all awful candidates.
But they have a bench that they can run.
And bro, they do.
One of those four names is probably going to be nominated to replace Bart Barber.
Oh, it's Unzicker. Did you hear all the people? I'm sitting there and he's like, are you really going to listen to people who tweet more than they tithe and who post more than they pray? And it's like, how long did you stay up writing this? Like, he was just fired up on, and then I hear all these people in the background, and it reminded me of like those nature documentaries that have like the sea lions, like or like that's what it seemed like. You got all these people back there, yeah, and I'm like, this is nuts.
That Bart Barber's convention's address was more of a sermon than Todd Unzicker's convention sermon.
It was.
Because Bart Barber actually stayed in scripture more. He gave a pep talk, like he's at some sort of pep rally. That's kind of how I took that sermon. But let's talk about 2024. I want to get your takes on this. So I think this is called the Al Mohler Gambit. It's not my strategy. It's the strategy that I see on the field being played by the conservatives. And I'm just saying, if you're going to play the game, play it right.
Right.
If this is the strategy you're going to go with, play it right. Because if you keep cozying up to Al Mohler, you might as well run Al Mohler in 2024. And I think that's what they're building towards. I don't like him as a candidate, but that seems to be the strategy. I can see a couple reasons. Like I did a video on this and an article and stuff. So, and it's a little controversial because a lot of people on our side don't like Al Mohler until the convention comes around. Then all of a sudden we love Al Mohler, and it's very frustrating to watch. But hear me out on the strategy here. 2024 is in Indianapolis. That is closer to Louisville than Nashville was. So you got about 45 minutes closer of a drive. So geographically, that's in Al Mohler's backyard, making it a very favorable terrain for his toadies to come along and vote for him. So the electability is there. Then you have the narrative that if Al Mohler and Mike Stone's votes were combined, they would have won in 2021. So again, that's the electoral math. I'm more of a political junkie than I am a Theo bro. So there's the electoral math. And then here's the thing. The conservatives, I don't feel like have a bench. They don't have a deep roster, and they have 0 positions and titles. So Al Mohler, I think the strategy with the Al Mohler Gambit, and this is something we should discuss, entertain, at least as an option, is that you leverage a voting block to get concessions out of Al Mohler. Even if you get 30% of the appointments that he makes, that's 30% versus 0% out of Bart Barber. And then that gives you time that, first of all, helps you build a bench for people that can be future nominees that are conservative. And then also builds you time to build more organization and infrastructure. It buys you 2 years if successful in Indianapolis. So what are your thoughts on this Al Mohler Gambit, as I call it? Like, I'm not necessarily endorsing the strategy, but it is the strategy that I see being played, and it might be their best path. It might be the conservatives' best path forward to take back the convention at this point in their current condition.
I think that he certainly is setting himself up for that. I also think that if you look at him, the Baptist Faith and Message is like, that's his baby, right? That's his legacy, pretty much. He's nearing retirement age. Within 10 years, he'll probably fade away. I think that he actually, I mean, I really don't like him. All of the big names plaguing the SBC right now are somehow traced back to him, right?
That's right.
And you look at, but he is also a very selfish man. He's very opportunistic, and he's very much about his legacy. And here's the only reason why I think he would be a safe candidate. I think that he would love to be able to put his name in history in the SBC as the one who helped in the original conservative resurgence, helped with the BFM 2000, and then helped turn things around. So long as it solidifies his name as being a savior of the SBC and his legacy, I think that that's the only way you're going to get him to make any kind of decent decision. And it's the only reason why I think that he cares about the Baptist Faith and Message is because if we go outside of that and then it gets forgotten or replaced, or there goes his name in relevance. And I really think that he would be a safe candidate, because this is politics. I don't like it either, but it's just how it is. And I think that he would want to be able to have that reputation and people remember him as the one who came in and saved the convention. There was nobody that could run. There was nobody with the name, and here he is. It's his last final fight before he retires. Oh, I could see it. I could see it. And I think it's safe. And I hate to admit that. So I ask your forgiveness now.
I don't think that Mohler will run because he's already lost twice. And I don't think that he'll put his name up to lose a third time. There's something about, the biggest name in that room is Al Mohler, but Mike Stone got more votes than he did. And that was in Nashville, which isn't far from Louisville. It's closer than Indianapolis is.
No, Indianapolis is closer. I ran the math.
Are you sure?
It's about 45-minute drive closer.
Well, and
in miles.
Okay.
In 2021, Russell Moore was fresh on everyone's mind. J.D. Greer, fresh on everyone's mind. Like, that was all still real raw and fresh. And remember, he just, Moore, like, just a few weeks before he left, like, just accused all kinds of people of racism. And people wanted I voted for Randy Adams.
And, I endorsed Randy Adams, actually.
And when you try pandering, like, Randy Adams would have and should have won, but he tried pandering and had that lady come nominate him so he could prove that he's not a racist and a chauvinist, which dumb idea. You should have had someone come out and fire away, but all that was still fresh on everyone's mind, and it's still fresh on their mind that he was from Mohler. And I think that's why he performed as poorly as he did. And I think a lot of people have already forgotten about Russell Moore and those people.
Yeah, I don't think Mohler will permit his name to be run. There's something about entity employees or entity presidents running. I think Paige Patterson is one of the exceptions that has actually been SBC president while being the president of a seminary. But it's mostly pastors. It's been a long time since a lay person has won SBC president.
Oh, we got some disagreement on that, but it's interesting because I just see Al Mohler kind of positioning himself to take in that, be the Caesarian figure, even though he's not really Caesarian at all, to get welcomed into the city to liberate it. Or maybe, dang it, who's the guy who takes over after Belshazzar? That guy who's welcomed into Babylon after the night where the temple artifacts are defiled. So that's who Al Mohler maybe wants to see himself as. So interesting move. Then we
if he loses, though, it taints his legacy. Like that's the thing. Like, he's already tainted his legacy from a couple years ago. I just don't see. I mean, he may surprise me.
It's a risk, but Indianapolis would be his last best chance to win. So
I think he loves it. I think that he loves the idea. And I think that people are forgetful enough to, I mean, obviously the messengers, but I don't know. Like, I feel like he kind of just came out of the woodwork, like to suddenly, like, he's been so wishy-washy, and then to finally kind of, position himself as like, oh, I'm going to be the bulwark of orthodoxy and, willing to, go against Rick Warren and then that crazy lady. And he just, like, he was like really positioning himself. I really feel like he's trying to set himself up for that position.
Let me respond to some chat here. Correct me if I'm wrong. Al Mohler isn't overtly hostile towards Christian nationalism, right? That is mostly true. He's not actually hostile to it, which is shocking given that he's not overly conservative on a political side, in my opinion. I know I've written I know I've attacked him from the right politically for his positions. But Mohler is poised to win now. It's tempting to strive for a redempting story. And then
King Darius.
It's like Darius or Cyrus,
I'm sorry.
and like who knows? Yes, you're right. He sees himself as Darius, and I believe that's Darius the Great, or is there a different?
Oh,
Darius?
he's
Darius the Great.
He's gonna roll up in there, and he's gonna bring the artifacts back, and he's gonna put them in his own banquet.
So exactly. So after that, we had and we just want to talk a little bit more about the officers. We had an overt liberal in Jay Atkins win first vice president. That was very frustrating to watch. It's like this guy got 63% of the vote, and like he name dropped SBC Voices in his speech. Is like red flag right there. If you wrote for SBC Voices, which by the way is a much smaller publication than Evangelical Dark Web, surprisingly, despite all its hype in the SBC. We're a larger website.
I mean, why doesn't he just have Baumgartner, nominate him? I went to college. I was at Southwestern with Bum Robber and
Bum Robber.
Yeah,
Baumgartner.
No. You heard it correctly how I said it.
You heard it from Chris.
Yeah.
And I thought that was frustrating, and that gives me to my next portion of the notes is the 3 churches that were kicked out. We got Fern Creek, Freedom Church, and Saddleback. So Fern Creek, I imagine both of you voted to disfellowship those two for the overtly female pastor. We did have the funny line where she dissed Mark Dever for closing down his church. That was
she did.
Pretty hilarious, but it turns out she's not more conservative than those people because she apparently has rainbow paraphernalia.
I saw that
very shortly afterwards. It's like, okay, well, we know she's shady. We know she's lying about that, but otherwise, it's like, yeah, that was a nice dig at Mark Dever.
I loved it.
I'm currently researching Mark Dever, and it's like kind of boring to me because I don't think his story is that interesting. He's like, okay, he basically platformed and was the pipeline for a bunch of woke pastors and stuff. But he himself kind of doesn't weigh in as much, so it's just less interesting for that reason. That's kind of how I see Mark Dever. But Mark Dever was very instrumental in the Mike Law Amendment passage, be that, for what it is. So Fern Creek, what do you guys think of her fiery lady's speech?
I loved it. I felt like it was a wonderful example of what you can expect if you have crazy, rebellious women in behind the pulpit. But I loved how she said when she made the dig about the pastors closing their churches. I loved it because man, I remember I'll never forget, I just started pastoring during that time and as a senior pastor, and I didn't close ever. And the only time I received any kind of pressure or hate, it wasn't from anyone outside of the church. It was like other pastors in the association, the director of missions, and I'm just like, man, I'm just gonna, like, I don't pastor like a mega church. I'm just like this little dude out here in Texas, just trying to preach the word. We're not closing. And so for her to throw that shot out there, I kind of liked it, I couldn't imagine listening to that for more than I did.
Hey, she got cut off.
Yeah. And and then when people clapped, you remember when people were clapping when they cut her microphone off? And apparently some little girl ran up to her crying. And have y'all watched her interview on MSNBC or was it
No,
CNN?
I didn't watch that.
Oh, you need to.
Or
You need
Rick
to.
Warren's speech. I didn't watch that either. Or his
Oh,
post. I just saw it's like, wow, it's days later and he's silent. Rick Warren's silent on Twitter.
yeah.
So you have anything to say about Fern Creek, Jared?
No. I mean, it was good to show exactly
The object
why my clause amendment is necessary. I mean, why we're there to vote and why we need to put my clause amendment in.
So it was it 90 was so I'm trying to get the calculations here. 91% voted to oust that church, which is 9,700 messengers, I believe. And then Freedom Church was a more controversial, or it was a more disputed claim. And what were your guys' thoughts on that?
My plan was I was actually going to vote to keep him in until
Me
Dean and
too.
Sarah got up and spoke. Because if the issue was the pastor and he's gone, then why would we continue to have him kicked out? But with him staying there, I voted to remove him.
I actually voted for them to stay because like I'm not going to take Mr. Sarah's word for it. Not a chance.
Nor did I.
And it's like, I mean, they it doesn't benefit them at all to come over here to say, look, the man resigned, he's not there, and it's like, well, I mean, it seemed to me like I thought he was being pretty genuine, and it's like, look, if they booted the guy, I mean, it's this man's word versus Sarah's word. And I have no reason to believe Dean and Sarah. So that's where that's kind of where I was, and it's like, I mean, the man resigned. He's not in the pastorate. What's the problem? Like they're trying to.
Spoiler alert! I have an article in the works that it's probably a week out from being published on this church. I got some research going on for the situation at this church, and it's a lot shadier. I mean, it does seem very far-fetched that a church would need SBC affiliation, would value it so much that they would, organize a grand conspiracy. But if you look into the story of Richard Demzik, who's the woke pastor that was the subject of that, there's a lot there. A lot of shady stuff there that just keeps coming up. It's a very ugly story. And not exactly a good thing. We're going to cover that more in depth later. I just wanted to hear you guys and how you process the conflicting information. And, Christopher, you and 342 other people voted to have mercy on the church because, again, Dean and Sarah is not super credible. And he would also speak against, or he's also giving the convention sermon next year. So that's going to be very disastrous. So
can't wait to see what I glean from that.
Dean loves to punch right, and
he does.
I've done a video on him because of his view of same-sex attraction, but he uses that Tim Keller rhetoric that homosexuality doesn't send anybody to hell because heterosexuality doesn't send you to heaven, and which is just empty rhetoric. It's like saying racism doesn't send you to hell because loving all races doesn't send you to heaven. Or, I mean, it's just empty rhetoric, man.
Can you imagine saying that and expecting people to take it seriously?
He has said it for a decade, and he put it in his latest book from 2022 called Pure, which is published by Moody.
And that brings us to, speaking of gay affirming or sort of gay affirming, Saddleback Church. They got the most votes of mercy, unsurprisingly. And despite the fact that, there are about 406 messengers that voted to oust the Fern Creek Church over this issue, but not Saddleback Church over this issue. I thought that was interesting, but what do you, one of the best moments of the convention was Rick Warren getting his mic cut.
I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe they did that. I really couldn't. I was glad to see Brokeback go. When they cut his microphone, I was like, wow, they actually like really did that to him, like, okay. But I think that he was like, the speech he was giving, he wasn't trying to stay. I don't feel like he was trying to stay. And, and last year, how he talked about all the people, all the pastors they've ordained, all this work that they've done. And it's like, so we can thank Rick Warren for how good the SBC is doing. Good to know. And it's just like, when they actually cut his microphone, I was really, really surprised that they did that. That the super pious, Honorable Rick Warren would have his microphone cut. Wonderful. I loved it.
Jared, you got anything to say about Rick Warren and his speech and ouster?
I think that Rick Warren he's going to start another denomination, and that's what he was doing with his speech.
Come with me, sort of thing.
Yeah.
Well, he's got.
That's probably why they cut his microphone, so he
no, they cut him after 3 minutes and 10 seconds. I think they gave him some slack time, and he still deliberately drove past that. And I thought, he was just trying to have maybe if he gave whatever speech he gave last year at the convention, if he gave that this year, he would have probably gotten a better result. But instead, he wanted to have the argument with God, and it did not work out well. Did not work out well at all. Which brings us to the Todd Unzicker sermon. So I live watched that. I didn't react a whole lot during the sermon because I was just trying to process. But it was a very, my notes say it was a very regime sermon. It was more of a pep talk than it was an actual sermon and a motivational speech. A lot of college football references, which I think get kind of cringe because I think college football's a little overrated, but I don't like cheering for liberal universities. So with that said, and then the sermon took a shift towards guilt tripping dissenters and made comments that microphones were not working, was a sign from God to pray and not voice opinions. And then he quoted Trevin Wax of the Gospel Coalition and the North American Mission Board, beware of the urge to purge. And it's like the purge is the only thing that can save the SBC, because you got to change you got to terraform the electorate that shows up as messengers. You got to get rid of the bad churches. And that's your way of saving the SBC, is my opinion. The Mike Law Amendment. I guess we'll talk about that in a second, but those are some of my thoughts on the Todd Unzicker sermon. And you've kind of seen it memed, the Martin Luther posting more than he prays meme. I saw that. And then, which might have been a Joel Berry meme. I don't want to give credit where credit's not due. And then the meme of him as Red Skull from the crappy Captain America movie. Total waste of a great actor, by the way. The guy who played Mr. Smith in The Matrix. Total waste of him to be Red Skull in a Marvel movie. But anyway, I digress. So those are my thoughts on the Todd Unzicker sermon and the memes that came out afterwards.
Jared, do you want to go first?
You can go ahead, Chris. I can go after you.
Okay. To me, that was the hardest thing. because for one, we're not a church. We're literally here for one reason, to do business. And it's like talking about the SBC as if we're a church, and so typically I'll the last 3 years, the previous 2 years, I would go up to the microphone, just quote a scripture, say what I gotta say, and leave, right? And the only thing I wanted to say in regards to him, and I didn't get to, but the truth never fears examination. Never. And the truth and those standing in the truth do not fear being, examined, nor do they fear giving an account. The only people that get angry are liars and grifters, and he is both. And in trying to guilt people, to assume that we don't tithe, we don't do this, and it's like you have made your living by grifting off the Southern Baptist Convention, and it to just guilt everyone that I agree with what Ray said about. I felt like Bart Barber's sermon was his address was more of a sermon than what Unzicker was doing, because it was just a nonstop assault on anyone trying to. The darkness hates the light, and anyone bringing light to a dark situation, the darkness is going to hate them too. And you could just see the anger. And we're not talking about like a righteous indignation either. This wasn't an anger, similar, of Jesus flipping tables. No, this was the anger that anyone would dare question what they're doing or how they're spending money, or their atrocious social justice gospel, which is no gospel at all. And it's like I would be very careful trashing people that simply want to have the truth, you know? And you could just see the hate. I mean, you could really see that man was angry. And that was very, very it was very telling of their you could just tell that they really do not like true Southern Baptists. They don't like us.
These guys need to realize that they're supposedly the servants of Southern Baptist. I mean, that's what all of our entity employees are. That's what of our elected officials. That's what our SBC president is. They're servants of Southern Baptists. They submit to the vote of the convention. And, they should seek to persuade us rather than condemn us because we have criticized things that are contrary to Scripture. Unzicker is the right-hand man of J.D. Greer, or at least he used to be. And you saw that reflected. I mean, Greer, it's like he was preaching that sermon, and Bart Barber posts more than any of us.
Oh, I know.
Yeah, his tweets per day is like north of 10, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess he's preaching to Bart.
Hey, let me tell you, Beta Bart. So I don't have like Twitter. I do, but I have Facebook. But it's just, I know I see people put screenshots and stuff online, and it's like those guys are always going off, and just holding like they don't care that they're hypocrites. They know that they're hypocrites. These are not. I'm sorry, but I don't believe that these people are, just wayward brothers that, just kind of lost their way. No, I don't believe that at all. I think that these people are grifters, and I think that they're going to continue to pick at the carcass until there's nothing left to pick at. I do, however, think that the messengers are. I was shocked at how many people in the in that room were just clapping for when he was ranting. I mean, I felt like I was in mid-30s Nazi Germany, and this dude is just up there going off, and it's like, dude, what do you want me to do? You want me to give you $20? Please be quiet. Like,
I
I'll
mean,
buy you.
first of all, you're
Like,
in Joe Biden's America. That's way worse. But second of all, it's like I do got to ask, what was you're saying that the environment in the room was very supportive of the sermon. I also heard that there weren't as many claps as you would have expected when the sermon was over.
Well, the SBC employees, the entity employees, which there had to be thousands in that room that just work for the SBC. They're employed by the SBC. They included in their budget to send them to the SBC. And so, of course, they're clapping. They're tired of being criticized as well. And, that's the thing. Like, I'm surprised that Mike Law's amendment passed, because you have to have a 2/3 vote in order to alter the Constitution. And so you have to do it 2 years in a row. And just the amount of SBC employees can sway a vote when it's a 2/3 vote. And that's something, if we ever get enough conservatives there to the convention, we need to make a motion that if you're an SBC employee, you can come to the convention, but you cannot vote. And that's why
they still got to be registered with the local church.
Right. But imagine if somebody went to your church, one of your members works for the SBC, and your church doesn't have to pay for them to go. Like, of course, you're going to let them, like, your church will be like, sure, we'd love to send you,
Yeah, they'll pray for their trip,
Yeah.
And the little old lady is going to say, oh, here, let me give you some money for your trip. Go get some donuts, and they will. And you could tell by how remember when the lady wanted to do the deal in Hawaii? Everyone's excited at that. And I'm
we
just
gotta
like,
talk about that for a second. Like, I think that everyone who's really applauding that were the employees.
Yeah,
because everyone else realizes, this is a nice idea until the bill comes.
I was terrified. And they're just, they're so used to grifting, and they're like,
they're
man,
celebrating their grift.
Yeah, they love it. Why not? Why not?
Why not do it in Hawaii if it's, a grift?
Why not the Caribbean next year? And now
Dubai, maybe.
And maybe what I'm thinking is maybe like, I was surrounded. You remember earlier, like I was saying about the sea lions. I may have just been surrounded by them. They were just so loud. These guys were like, preach, preach. I'm like, man, you're digging this? Like, I didn't know if they were going to bring out like a statue of Baal. Like, I didn't know. Like, I told my wife to get the kids out of there. I wasn't trying to have them pass through the fire. I didn't know it was happening.
If you could call it a sermon, it was on Revelation 5, I believe. And obviously he skipped over the Revelation 2 and 3, Thyatira, tolerating the Jezebel, which is explicitly condemned by Jesus himself. So it's like, but if you want to, not tolerate the Jezebel, then you're the problem in the convention. That's kind of, and he unironically preached out of Revelation while making that point. Lots to say about that. Now we can move on to the Mike Law amendment. Did you think it would pass? So you're a no.
I didn't think so.
Jared,
I thought it'd be close, but 2/3 is a hard threshold to reach.
They got well above 2/3. I'd say somewhere between 70 to 80%, or 75, 80% is what they had in the room.
And there's two things about this convention that actually, this last meeting, that gave me hope for the convention. that amendment and the removal of Brokeback. Those two things, like, let me see, that, like, when all the people there, they don't have discernment, right? In most churches,
Right.
most you're at, and so they're just sitting there. They're just there trying to. They want, like, for the most part, most of the messengers, like, they're decent people. They want to feel like they're doing something good in the world, and they want to feel like they're doing something good in the name of Jesus. They don't want to hear nothing bad. They feel like, no, we're doing good stuff. We're passing out water bottles and we're sending missionaries. That's what they think. And so, but so it's easy to fleece those people. They don't really know. So when you start talking to them about doctrinal purity, they have no idea. They're reading Priscilla Shirer and buying Tony Evans' study Bible at Lifeway in the next room. They have no clue. But when it's something that's, like, blatantly obvious, like, you've got some wretched thing standing up talking about, I don't agree with you, Calvinist, and I don't agree with you. And then you got Rick Warren of, Brokeback. I mean, it's like, no, that's bad. We're against that. So when it's something obvious, like black and white, they're like, no, we're going to do the right thing. So I think that, and then also with this amendment, it's like, no, that's the right thing. And so, like, the really obvious things, like, it really actually gave me a little hope for the convention. Like, maybe, give them a little bit more credit.
I came out a little more optimistic about the convention as well. And then, the Al Mohler Gambit conversation was in my head. So it's like, okay, well, that's actually something that can buy them time to get some leadership that isn't the Conservative Baptist Network, because I think they suck at their jobs. But I already did that. I already did that video.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was my analysis post 2022, was that the CBN was bad at this, and it's a no from me, dog.
So the CBN, like, so we have this carcass, right? And so you have the hyenas that are getting in on the action. They're feasting. And then you have the buzzards, and that's CBN. Like, they want to come in and get at that carcass too. And so, I mean, they're willing to do anything. And so anytime a hyena moves, like Russell Moore, he gets out of the way, a little buzzard comes and tries to pick at that carcass. That's what they come across as. Like, oh, just let us have a seat at the table. That's what they really come across as. Like, they're always late on anything that's just obvious.
I mean, they didn't respond to
Pompeo come speak. I mean, who's a member of a Presbyterian church that has a female pastor. I mean, oh wow, what a wonderful. Oh, and they're proud of it. They love it, and it's like.
I mean, I just knew he was a boomer con, but I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So the other thing is about that is that they don't articulate the dire situation that the SBC is in. They didn't run, Mike Stone doesn't run on the egalitarian issue, which was a layup for him to be that guy to run on that issue. It would have been a layup because he could establish that as his issue, but he doesn't do that. Instead, he wants to be, Alf Landon trying to run against FDR based on we're going to make Social Security more affordable. That didn't work in 1936. And there's a reason why I'm a young guy. There's a reason why I'm a young man making a very old reference here, but that's what his campaign was. And but yeah, I'm getting myself off topic. But the Mike Law amendment passed. It gives me some hope for the SBC if they can buy time. And they need to buy time to get themselves more organized, because the CBN is not the organization that they want.
They are not the path forward. They are not.
Jared, you have anything to say about the Mike Law vote? Did you? And I'll spring a question here. Did you guys like the substitution language that they introduced on the floor?
I did not, because it's that the world is watching junk. Because the language that he used was not have a female pastor of any kind or a woman pastor of any kind. That was the original language of the amendment. And then Juan Sanchez basically takes the language from the Baptist Faith and Message 2000 and says, let's put that in there. Only men can be a pastor of any kind, or something along those lines. You're saying the same thing. It's that old.
We got to be positive.
Yeah, it's that we're stating what men can do, not what women can't do. Well, you're actually stating both of them, right? Like, it's that I can't stand that. We shouldn't care what the world thinks. We need to just, say what the Bible says and be unashamed about it, be clear about it.
Sure.
So I did not like the amendment to the amendment, but it's still getting at what we agree on, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
You have anything to say on that?
I see kind of the same that, the world, and I understand. I don't know do you think that maybe that was made out of fear because they thought it wouldn't pass?
Well, Juan Sanchez had
Where'd he
evidently had a group behind him, and if it wasn't amended, they would vote against it.
Juan Sanchez is on the board of the Gospel Coalition, for those of you in the audience, and it's scary that he is one of the people helming this, along with Mark Dever.
Juan's heavily involved at SBTS as well. I believe Juan's a good man, but I think for some reason that language was important to him.
So you would say he's along the lines of a Kevin DeYoung or a Denny Burke?
Yeah.
He's in
that's my understanding. Now I might be wrong, but that's my understanding. I've read his THM thesis at Southern. That's where I went to school too. And I mean, he seems like a solid fella.
Okay, he just hangs out with a bad crowd. Along those lines, if you read the SBC Constitution, the reason why I didn't like the language and why I asked is because the language in the SBC Constitution is all in the negative, like they had it. Like the original wording was parallel to the structure of that amendment, and then they change it to not be parallel with the structure of that amendment, and I did not like that. It doesn't read well. It read much better in the original language, so they should have kept the original. But if that's what gets it passed, and then you can exercise the urge to purge, so be it, I guess. But then they tried to undermine that with the James Merritt resolution. I guess we got to talk about the James Merritt comeback, which kind of happened. The James Merritt comeback. He had to pre-resign in disgrace from something at SBTS because he affirmed his son's teachings when his son is openly homosexual, and writes for the Washington Post, I think, sometimes. So it's like
the racist jokes.
Bart Barber defended Merritt publicly whenever that happened. And but yeah, he lost his position at Southeastern Theological Seminary. As a result, I had forgotten about that, but it is 100% to undermine. So my assumption is Bart Barber's going to, pick this task force, and on Tuesday at the convention next year, they're going to make recommendations, and if we vote on those and pass those, then it will nullify the need to pass Mike Law's amendment on Wednesday. Yeah, so that's my assumption. That's how they're going to undermine, because Mike Law's has to be passed twice, and it's 2/3, and a recommendation from a committee just takes a majority vote.
Yeah, and it's part of the committee report.
So it doesn't take 2/3.
And that'll go through so easy.
And then Bart Barber is going to establish. He's going to throw a bunch of liberals on there, just like you saw with the Abuse Reform Implementation Task Force. He threw a bunch of liberals on there. Todd Benkirk being the most disgraceful of which, Mike Keobone, and you look at all these people. It's like, wow, they don't pass a simple internet check,
Mm-mm.
routine background check, if you want to use that language. They didn't pass that at all. And it showed. And what bothered me as we're transitioning topics is that the Southern Baptists debated more about printing materials for their meeting than they did about whether or not we should deem people credibly accused based on reports that won't hold up in court.
So let me talk a minute about the just how shady the platform is.
Oh, I know.
So on Wednesday, the discussion of motions was supposed to be at 4:00. Well, earlier that day, Bart just announces, he says, we're going to move some things around so that they can get back from lunch from the seminary meetings. And they moved the motions and they put Merritt's motion in there at that time. So people are fresh from eating. So John Michael LaRue's motion against the credibly accused language was presented on the first day, the first wave of motions. He made that motion. It did not get considered till the last session when everybody's tired, when everybody's ready to get out of there. But they brought Merritt's motion. They made they brought it to the best time after everybody has ate, and it's the first thing on the docket when we get back from lunch. And so you don't run out of time. They rearranged the schedule verbally just to make sure that Merritt's motion went through. And I mean, it's just, we tried to amend it, but it didn't pass.
That task force, that was, I mean, everyone was crying.
Mike Keobone was a big baby on the stage.
Man,
and
when he
I
got
roasted
up
him
there,
on Twitter for that. And
when he gets up there, he's like, he walks up to the podium. He's like, I don't want to have to talk about this or something like that. It's like, you have been preparing all night. This is your time to shine. Talking about you don't want to talk about this. You can't wait to talk about this.
we all know you want to talk about this.
Yeah, he loves it. It just, and he's getting everyone prepared, taking long breaks, letting everyone have a chance to think of a terrible, because everyone knows someone who's been abused, or maybe they have, and so that's the first thing that comes to their mind, and he's making sure you get time to think about it. Then he cries a little bit again, and then who was the dude that come and spoke after him, the big Native American guy?
Mike Keobone was.
That's Keobone.
Who am I who is the, okay, so that guy, no, the gentleman before him. Remember?
That was, it started with an A, I think.
Man.
But he cried, and then Mike Keobone cried, and it's like,
hey,
I should have made a drinking game for the SBC in which men crying was gonna be like, finish your drink.
So that guy, I actually think that he was sincere about his crying. I think that man is seriously sad about something. I mean, it's not sex abuse, but he's definitely sad. I mean, I've never seen, that dude, and then they're patting him on the back. I mean, and you look around, it's like, guys, y'all, are y'all really believing this? This is manipulation at its finest. And then that dude that got up and he's talking, all right, it's time to steel your backbones, and acting like, it's time to be courageous and take this stand. And it's just like, I don't know, that was difficult. You feel like you're just you feel like you can't believe this is happening. You got all these grown men crying on stage. You've got this obese feller over here talking about it's time to, steel your spine, and it's like, all y'all are doing, I think that this is all just a setup, because this is going to get people sued. They'll be able, Men are gonna.
It already has gotten them sued, by the way.
And it's just another way for I think it's all an effort to bring down the convention. People are obviously doing the work of the devil, and it's the last denomination holding on to some form of orthodoxy. So of course the enemy's going to try to tear that down. And if you can bankrupt it through lawsuits and everything else, and then slander as many preachers as possible, why not? I mean, it makes sense when you look at it through through that lens. That was just absurd. The credibly accused, like that, I just couldn't believe. And now all of a sudden, everyone's a sex abuse survivor. Um, everyone. I mean, everyone. I mean, it's like they get up to talk. It's like, I'm a sex abuse survivor, and it's like, just talk. Like this isn't. Like we're trying to conduct business here, and y'all are just trying to tear down anyone who has an accusation made against them. And that was just, to me, I really felt like it was so bad that it was borderline absurd that this was actually going on. That people with a working mind would go along with this.
So back to the the James Merritt amendment. I'll let you go first, Jared. What did you think about the poison pill strategy that Dusty Devers attempted on the floor?
Yeah, I agreed with it. We read it beforehand. I thought that was good. We didn't think that we could get it. Didn't think that we could get it just voted down. So we thought the safest thing was to amend it to nullify what it actually does. But I do wonder if Al Mohler, if that was a concession, like if he'll be on, if Barber will put him on that task force.
So you think that's still possible, even though the the amendment failed?
I think it's possible. Mohler's still got a lot of cards. I don't know what he would have to give up in order to be on that task force. I don't know, but I thought Steve Gaines was on our side and he was standing there with the Merritt motion. So I'm a little confused at what their end goal is with that task force. We'll know better when we see who Barber puts on that task force.
And I'm telling you, it's not going to be pretty if his last task force is any indication.
Right.
So the next thing I want to talk about is the reports by the seminaries. You had a question for Danny Aiken. Just let me give a rundown on all 6 seminaries and my opinions of each. Danny Aiken gave a very terrible report because his numbers sucked, and that's why he didn't talk about anything in regards to that. He told stories instead to distract from his bad numbers. Jeff Eeyore gave the best report, I thought. He was able to talk about growth. He was able to talk about, we had this money that we got from these people and we gave it to, and we use it for these reasons. That was a very excellent report. Jason Allen cowered on the abortion question. That's basically all I wrote down for that. And then James Dew, right? I just wrote Dew. He tried to Jesus juke the report. He gave an awful report because his numbers also sucked. Funny how that is correlated. Al Mohler, I thought, was middle of the road, but when he answered questions, he articulated the issue of the pastor replacement rate is really bad, is in the negative right now. And he actually, voiced a concern that we should be having as if you're a seminary president or, interested in the longevity of the church in general. So I thought that was actually very useful for him to do that. And then David Dockery, attempted and I think did a decent job at trying to restore confidence in the scandaled Southwestern Baptist Theological Seminary. He talked about these people are now in charge. There's a new regime in town. these people you can trust to carry out these tasks. I thought it was a good report. Whether or not it'll pan out is to be determined, but I thought that was a good report. Now, Jared, you asked Danny Aiken about same-sex attractions. So how about you break down what do you ask him that for, and whether his answer was sufficient in your mind?
Yeah, so my issue with Aiken coming up to the convention is that he gave Rachel Gilson, one of his PhD students, a platform. Rachel Gilson says that she is same-sex attracted. She's married to a man, but she says essentially that she has lifelong same-sex attraction. And she says it doesn't matter if you're same-sex attracted or if you're sexually attracted to potted plants, you can be a faithful Christian. And so that's why I was asking him that. And I wanted to take a shot at the Nashville statement publicly so that people would go look up the language. The Nashville statement, it condemns homosexual immorality. It does not condemn homosexuality. It condemns transgenderism, but when it comes to condemning homosexual, it says homosexual immorality, implying that there's a form of homosexual morality. There are professors, there are numerous people who believe same-sex attraction is not sin that have signed the Nashville Statement. John Piper, Robert Gagnon, David Prince, who's a professor at Southern, Karen Swallow Pryor, who used to be at Southeastern.
Of course.
There's just numerous people, because the Nashville Statement is soft on its language. John Piper was a co-author, and he doesn't believe same-sex attraction is sin. And so I asked Danny Aiken that statement because I was expecting him, because he's platforming Rachel Gilson, who says same-sex attraction is not sin. I figured that he agreed with her, but he didn't, and I was thankful. They didn't let me speak, but I said it into the mic. Thank you. Those are excellent answers. I thought they were great answers.
The question is whether he believes it or whether he said it.
I don't understand, man. I don't understand. Like, if he really believes that, if he has the same view as I do about homosexuality, why in the world did he hire KSP? And why is he platforming Rachel Gilson? You just got rid of KSP. Why are you putting KSP Jr.? Why are you platforming her? Like,
Yeah, I mean, Rachel Gilson's bad news, and she has a long resume of being bad news. Christopher, if you have
that view that like I heard the CEO, like I was watching it just this morning, in fact, like that's becoming more and more prevalent with these the people that, like the CEO of Promise Keepers, he said that no homosexual inherits the kingdom of God. Well, he says no practicing, and he kept throwing that in there, practicing homosexual. And it's like they're trying to soften that, but that's not going to be good enough. During
I don't know if you saw John Piper's article this week, and he's trying to say that
he's awful.
Homosexuality is theft, or he's trying to say that homosexuality is no longer a criminal offense because of it's an excommunicable offense now. It's like, you didn't say that about thievery. That's in the same verse, but very bad arguments are being employed on this issue. But I digress. But
I was going to ask the president of Lifeway.
Let's talk about what Lifeway.
on Lifeway's website. On Lifeway's website, they recommend 2 women authors who are same-sex attracted, Rebecca McLaughlin and I think Rachel Gilson, maybe. Or no, it's Jackie Hill Perry. So those 2, and I was going to ask him if homosexuality was the only sin that you can have for your entire life, or could you be a lifelong racist and still write for Lifeway? Or a lifelong, pedophile, or, You know what I'm saying? Like it drives me nuts, the rhetoric that is used, because the way that the Bible speaks of sexuality in Genesis 2 is that it's tied to your sex, male or female. Like your sexuality, like you are a heterosexual because it's tied to your design. If you are male or female, you are a heterosexual. Like there is nothing else. And so all who deny that are suppressing the truth and unrighteousness. And so we separated our sexuality from God's design. And we said, no, I'm male, but I'm attracted to men. We separated that from God's design. And now we're further down the road. Now people are saying they're separating not only their sexuality from their biology, they're separating their gender from their biology. Like it's just a further step down the homosexual road. We didn't deal with this back in the 80s. We allowed secular psychology to get into the church and say that your sexuality can be separate from your biology. It can be separate from God's design.
And we're going to put a pin on that statement when we come around to talking about the resolution you tried to introduce on the floor. But continuing with the Lifeway thing, I clipped the Beth Moore struggle session clip because that's what that was a struggle session. And then a lot of this was calls to, have some discernment in the materials that you distribute and or publish. And even that was just shouted down. Like, do you even know these people? It's like, no, I don't. And that doesn't change whether or not it's biblical or not. So I thought, last year Lifeway gave an excellent report on how they translated the Bible in this Indian language, and they were able to, get materials to this people. This year, it was VBS. Would somebody think of the children? And that's what it was. They played it safe, and it's like, that's because they got nothing, do they? And I kind of see past these reports. And then
have you read Beth Moore's memoir, though? Have you read it?
I haven't, but I basically, I know a lot of her life story, and she left the Southern Baptist Convention when her ministry started losing money, so she had to find a new audience. But praise God,
that Lifeway must be some good grift, man.
Well, they got the Christian Standard Bible, which they own. I believe they own the copyright to that, so they don't have to pay copyright to the Lockman Foundation or whoever does the ESV or anything like that. So they made Lifeway a lot more profitable because they have a Bible translation of their own. Multiple now. Like last year, they talked about the Indian Bible translation that they, have the copyright to. So the copyright thing was their biggest barrier, and now they got the CSB. So,
man,
it's a good business move. I got to say that. The ERLC report came afterwards, and Brent Leatherwood's a definite liar, embellishing his. I'm going to call him out, embellishing his accomplishments and contributions and lobbying efforts, because the one bill that they're documented for lobbying for was the gun control bill in Tennessee. That is the only thing that they're on record for taking a stand for. That's the only thing they can't, had an open letter for. They were nowhere to be found on any of the transitioning children bills in the various states, and their fingerprints are on opposition to pro-life legislation as well. He did mention some, MAID bill in Nevada that they were a part of opposing, but I had never heard of that. I'd never heard of that bill, but the one bill that they did try to rally behind, he omitted from his speech. And I'm surprised he wasn't asked about that, but they only allowed like one or two questions to him.
Yeah,
and he bombed that question because he was asked whether he thought that a woman who murders her child after it's been born should be punished, since he doesn't believe that if it's before they're born, they should be punished. So your thoughts on that whole exchange? I clipped that as well this week, so I gave my live thoughts. What are your thoughts on that?
So I thought that the way he answered that, I honestly, with the ERLC, I guess I've just come to expect that it's. I mean, you're talking to Democrats, so I mean that's what they are, and I did that deal about the thing in what was it, New Mexico? No, it was
Uh,
real recent.
assisted suicide in Nevada.
Like okay, yeah, I was really like, like I hadn't heard of that, but they have just had their hands, like they're always just seems to be on the wrong side of every issue, and he got put on the spot, but the ERLC, I mean I'm at a loss. Like, I feel like that thing is just absolutely atrocious, and I don't know. I really I can't believe that it even exists. Honestly, it's so bad, and I don't know how they keep getting a pass. How this just continues to go, especially. It's like Russell Moore just passed the baton off to this dude, and
No,
it
Richard
is
Land just passed the baton on to Russell
and,
Moore, and Richard Land was also terrible at the job.
and
And I know I'm a little young to say that, but you look at, what Richard Land has written in the last few years, and then, I was listening a couple weeks ago, and Steve Day said that, he interviewed Richard Land, and this guy sucked. That was like several years ago when he was the ERLC guy, and he got name dropped. It's like, okay, and then he's going to World Economic Forum in 2006. I'm like, this guy,
oh no,
like,
okay, I
he
gotta.
was always bad, wasn't he? Like, there's a reason why the baton got passed straight to Russell Moore and then straight to Brent Leatherwood. Like, I don't think it's like, there's a sudden decline that happened with Russell Moore. I think the compromise was always there, I guess.
He was just so outspoken, I guess. Like it's almost like he looked for ways to try to anger people,
Brent Leatherwood,
and
Russell
Russell
Moore,
Moore. Um, Leatherwood,
Jesus.
I think he's just incompetent. Like he's a horrible speaker. He's not good at. I mean, he's not even good at like dressing his answers. He's not even good at word salads. I don't know how he's in that position. I really
Nobody
don't.
wanted it. Nobody wanted it. He doesn't have a PhD. I mean, he's not. He's got experience, and that's what qualified him for the position. But nobody. He was like they settled
Least
for Brent.
qualified.
They settled for Brent Leatherwood. I mean, that's what happened.
Yeah,
And his answer made me angry because he essentially said that women are children. I mean, I don't understand why it didn't tick all the women in the room off, because they don't know they're killing a baby, because Roe v. Wade was passed and all women are victims. They don't
we
have
talked
any
about
agency.
suppressing the truth and unrighteousness. But I just point out to this comment, apparently based on Leatherwood's answer, if a mother murders her toddler, she is a victim of those who persuaded her to do so and should not be charged with the crime. Furthermore, also a victim of those who sold her the weapon to do so as well, because that's what Brent Leatherwood surprisingly said. Like, usually this type of thinking is paired with, oh, they go into a doctor's room in a surgery and that's where the abortion is done, when majority of the time it's done in their own home when they take the pills on their own volition. That's how a majority of abortions are carried out, especially nowadays. But they keep wanting to paint this outdated picture of the industry when the industry is actually big pharma. It's, all those erection pill commercials where they get it discreetly to your door. That's what the industry is now. They've gone to a telehealth model because it's cheaper than hiring butchers. It's cheaper, so that's what they're doing. So it's weird for Brent Leatherwood to acknowledge that and then still say that they're not liable.
They are being paid. Like, I have a hard time believing, I think it will eventually come out that, our leaders are receiving money from pro-life institutions or pro-life groups to argue these things to Southern Baptists, because it's illogical, it's unbiblical. Like, I mean, at least Mohler had the guts last year to say that the woman is culpable for going there to murder her baby. She's culpable. And so it ticked me off. Jason Allen knows better. I mean, those dudes, they know better. You're never going to end abortion until you give the unborn the same rights that we have.
That's right.
That
And
you're never going to end it. I mean, a woman will always abort her baby if she knows that there's going to be no consequences. I mean, imagine saying that murder's wrong for everybody except you. Well, that person's going to go do it. Like,
yeah. I think it was Randy Adams had it's called the SBC report card. And I don't know if he put this up, but this was in 2021, and they found some evidence that there's an organization, a nonprofit organization that has links to a man named George Soros, and this organization has been sending money to the ERLC through one, and I believe it was in that SBC report card by Randy Adams. I wish I could remember it, but you can find it. It's there. I will find that website, but it's the website is it has this print up almost like how a newspaper would look. And I really they definitely, I believe that you're 100% accurate that one of these satanic nonprofits are certainly giving money to these people. They are. And I think the ERLC is I think it's horrible. In fact, I think that it's worse than Planned Parenthood itself, because at least they're telling you what they're doing. These people in the ERLC are lying, and they're doing it in Jesus's name. I really
Yeah, I mean,
I have
Brett
a hard time
Leatherwood
talking
lied in
about
his
it.
report,
I
and you're
can't
right about that.
stand those men. They make me sick, and it really, really bothers me a lot. Those men are wicked, evil men. And sorry, but I just remember reading about that, and also in that same report, it was talking about how Planned Parenthood and the Clinton Foundation both have higher financial transparency ratings than the North American Mission Board. And I mean, this was and then the mansions that they had been buying, they had 6 or 7 mansions that they had bought on the East Coast. Do y'all know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, they had a real estate.
It was
thing.
it
And
was
a lot of the
crazy.
houses that they bought were to the benefit of megachurch pastors.
Yes, they were letting them stay in them for free. And then how Tom Rainier, man, he got that $1 million
Golden parachute from
yeah,
Lifeway, I believe.
after just tanking it. These guys are getting paid to do the devil's work. They make me sick. And next year I'm bringing what's called the half mile hailer, and I'm saying something. You can
Bring
believe
it.
that. I promise.
I'm gonna
promise.
encourage you to do that. That's for sure. Because that's.
Hey Ray, I
I want the
can't tell
show.
you how serious. Like, I know a lot of people joke around about doing that stuff, but I will.
hey,
I will.
Dean and Sarah's going to preach a sermon against you.
I'll preach one against him.
So I guess,
go ahead.
I guess the last thing to talk about is the final resolutions report, which did not go very well. I mean, the back half of the resolutions were a little ho-hum, but resolution 7, actually, if you look at the second session of the second day, Bart Barber definitely lost composure, I thought. What started off very polished and professional, Bart Barber, he violated Robert's Rules of Order on the resolution 7 debate, where he recognized 3 people in a row to speak against the amendment that was supposed to, on a resolution that was supposed to condemn Christian nationalism. He recognized 3 people in a row to speak against the amendment that would have brought some common sense Christian principles to that resolution.
I noticed his composure changed right after
Mike Law amendment.
Yeah, like it really started changing, and when I don't know, like you could just really see like he lost control of the room. You could like you could just tell like he was ready to go eat. He's hungry. I mean, that man takes his lunch seriously.
Yeah, he does.
He does. And I remember like right after they cut my microphone, I mean almost immediately. And like you could really see like just his composure was different. Everything was just so much different. And I don't know if like it's because something really threw him off. And I don't think it was just that Mike Law amendment. I really don't. I think something else really, really like got under that man's skin because he was making like I don't know. It something seemed wrong. I mean, doesn't it seem like something was like something definitely got under that man's skin, and it wasn't just that the amendment. I really don't. I don't know what it was, but there towards the end, like he was just like it seemed like he didn't care. Like he wasn't trying to be funny anymore. All that was just done. I don't know. I felt like there was a significant change in his demeanor.
Well, with that said, the resolution 7 where you had the one guy go up and speak to the amendment saying, well, we do use this sort of government to restrict the conscience of unbelievers because we don't just let Muslims do FGM and honor killings. And it's like, common sense statement like that was just kind of, again, Baptists historically didn't, you got Roger Williams, but he was a bit of an outlier when it comes to recognizing religious liberty for all denominations. Baptists did not historically do that. Roger Williams is an outlier. The 1689 doesn't do that. The 1833 doesn't do that. The Baptist Faith and Message 1925 does that, but that document belongs in the trash along with its 1963 counterpart. Those are terrible Baptist faith statements when the 2 others that I mentioned before that were much better. And if you're a Calvinist, you can't sign on to 1925 at all whatsoever. It's an anti-Calvinist faith statement. 63 gets a little bit more in the middle, but it also lacks the good stuff that's in the BFM 2000, which, is a top 5 faith statement for Baptist, I would say. And it's because it speaks to modern issues. But I thought that the whole religious liberty misunderstanding of Baptist theology, I thought was very cringe to see that on display. And it's not biblical. You can't back it up in scripture. But
so something that's different about, so I think that Brent Leatherwood is more liberal than Russell Moore. I think he's to the left of Russell Moore because Russell Moore argued in favor of the ERLC, and the International Mission Board did too. They signed on a friendly brief for a mosque being built in New Jersey. Now, when Russell Moore defended that, he argued that if the government can forbid Muslims from building a mosque, they can forbid us from building churches. Mm-hmm. You've got Leatherwood arguing for one of the goals of the ERLC for this year is to defend religious minorities' rights to worship. So it's not we have to defend people's religious liberty for others in order to protect our religious liberty, which is what Russell Moore argued. No, Brent Leatherwood is saying we have to actually say that Muslims, we need to defend their right to worship the devil. Like,
Yeah, it's insane.
It's
Are you
there's
also
no
going
way
to be
you can
defending
call that-
Satan clubs, Hail Satan clubs in elementary schools? Are you going to be defending that too?
He won't, but it just drives me nuts.
Logically, you would.
These people are leading
Oh, he
people
would.
to hell. These people are
They love
leading
it.
people to hell. It's a violation of the first commandment, right? I mean,
Right.
God hasn't given anyone the right to violate the first commandment. That's not a right that anyone has. So if I was the president of the ERLC, religious liberty for all, only because it's a byproduct of us fighting for your right to worship Christ freely without government coercion. Right? You have the right to repent and believe in Jesus, and the government should not be involved in that.
Right.
And so because the government shouldn't be involved in that, you may use that right to worship false gods, but I'm not going to protect your right to worship false gods. I'm protecting your right to worship Jesus alone.
Right.
So
and then, of course, they were nowhere to be found when the government wanted to close down churches.
See, I think that the ERLC should just be disbanded. And, they can take the money, they can divide it up amongst themselves. I'm okay with that. I just want them to go away. I'm to the point now.
The messenger voted to give them $3 million this year.
Praise God. Why not six?
Well, I think it was up from 2. But they get money from other sources as well.
Yeah.
But
we need to give them 6.66. That
666,000.
Yeah. I don't. Jesus said, I will build my church, and the gates of hell will not prevail. I think the ERLC, I think it's pointless. I've seen what Islam does. Spent a year in Afghanistan when I was in the army, and I would never defend for a mosque to be open. I don't care if it's a right or not. I mean, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to try to help you get to hell.
Right.
And in Psalm 119, verse 113, he says, I hate the double-minded, but I love your law. And then, you are my hiding place and my shield. I hope in your word. Depart from me, you evildoers, for I will keep the commandments of my God. A few verses later, he says, therefore, all your precepts concerning all things I consider to be right. I hate every false way. Where is the zeal? Like, it's okay to hate evil. You don't have to be positive and happy. And that's what they try to, like, bro, look around. So after this whole thing shut down, and my family, we were going to go and get one of those benet, or however you say it, the little donut things with the powdered sugar. And hey, some random guy from the convention walked up and gave me like $100. I don't know why. I don't know what that was about. He said that because I was getting really vocal towards the end. Like, yeah, I am one of the, like, the guys are talking about who's yelling and being disorderly. That's me. I'm of that type. And
that's why you're on here, right?
Probably. And I was like, oh, thanks. So we come around the corner, and here's this homeless dude urinating in this bush, and it's flowing down down the sidewalk, and it's like, look around. I'm not going to pretend like, oh, everything's so happy. Everything's just so good. Peace. There ain't no peace. This is a war. But if you want to walk around talking about peace, and, we need to treat each other with dignity and respect. No, I hate the double-minded. I love the law of the Lord. And I don't really care. Like, if you want to go worship a chair, go do it. I don't care. Just don't do it in the name of Jesus. Quit twisting my Savior's word. When I was addicted to heroin, the only thing that helped me was the Holy Spirit came into my heart. And all I had, I was homeless, addicted to heroin, all messed up. And all I had was the Bible. And you know what? Like, I just stayed reading. And in James 4, it says, draw near to God and he will draw near to you. I'm like, oh man, I got that. Like, I'm not one of those, like, I don't pretend to be really smart. I'm not one of those intellectual types. I'm just some normal dude with a Bible who's been saved. And, God uses all types. And I'm just glad that he chose to use me. And it's okay to get angry. And I don't care what Beta Bark or the Unzicker, whatever, and then the crybaby over the sex abuse. I mean, guys, what are we doing? Act like men, okay? Can we stop? This is absurd. And you see this ERLC, and I'm telling you, I can't stand abortion. So we're walking down there, and there were some guys that come up to us, are wearing these blue vests, and they're from Planned Parenthood. They're downtown in New Orleans. Like, what do you know about Planned Parenthood? I just put my hand up. Get away from me. I'm not talking to you. You make me sick. You're a baby killer. Get away from me. And they sit here. Well, the mother is just. She's just innocent. No, she ain't. She needs to be in prison. No, she ain't. She ain't nobody paying for that. Gross. And like, these people are just wicked. And I'm sorry, I'm going off right now, but that deal with the ERLC, they just make me sick. I'm bringing a microphone next year. I'm getting mad thinking about it. They're gonna have to pick me up and move me. And that's all right, because I can get a whole lot out in that time. And last year in Anaheim, I got to do some street preaching with a man named Judah Marks. And I'll never forget this. So, I mean, you've listened to me talk now for almost 2 hours. So you probably have a decent idea of what my personality is like.
A little bit.
And so we're on the streets in Anaheim, preaching the gospel of Jesus Christ. The only people that gave us any kind of like bad looks or hateful attitude were people from the convention from down the road.
Wow.
I'll never forget afterwards, like, a couple of people walked up and said, what kind of preaching is this? Like, what kind of church are you from? I said, well, that's just Bible preaching. And they're like, well, we've never heard anything like this. No, the only people to get angry were these betas and their wives that are getting ready to hit them, and it's like, and like I said last week, if you want, the only way to win this convention is we're going to have to go to the churches. It's going to take time and hours. And I already see what it's going to take. You're going to have to go win the hearts of the ladies. Yes. Oh, you're going to have to win the hearts of the ladies. I hate to say it, but I'm not saying go up there crying and compromise, but like, talk about the things. You go talking about doctrine, they have no idea. They're reading Beth Moore, bro. They ain't got a clue about doctrine.
Here's how you can win the ladies, because you think of the movie Aquaman, right? That movie did surprisingly well in theaters. You know why it did surprisingly well in theaters? Because women went out to see that movie. And why did they do that? Because they like Jason Momoa. Can he act? No. He can't act worth anything. But he's shirtless most of the movie, I imagine. So I've only seen it once.
I'm working out all year. I got you, Ray.
Make that person make that person your presidential nominee. Have him be ripped. Maybe even have the nominating speech be shirtless. And then bam, win the hearts of the ladies.
I'm doing it. They, but for real, like, it is going to take, like, talking about, preserving, like, honestly, if I were going to do it, this is how I would do it. Just like this. I'm a Southern Baptist, and I really believe that we need to protect our institutions. I have 2 daughters, and I just like to know that whenever they go to a Baptist college, that their sexual purity and their doctrinal purity are intact and protected, and that the staff actually takes that serious. Immediately, yeah, we agree. And something else, I really feel like we need to protect our missionaries. I don't like seeing them come off of the mission field because their money's being stolen and
Or they're
squandered.
being forced to get a jab that they don't want.
Oh, the clot shot, yeah, and I want to, and they will respond to that. Like, yes, those things are bad, and they will hear you out. But if we base it just on doctrine, which we should,
Yeah, I mean,
but
I would love for that to be the fight, but it's just
but it's not. They're reading Jesus Calling, and
right.
and they got Beth Moore jamming, and they just want to feel like they're doing something good. They run the household because the husband's all addicted to porn
I want
anyways.
to give
And
Ruth a shout out
sorry.
here that she's not like this, and I want to recognize, yes, that exists, and we're glad
And so
that
does my wife. And ma'am,
right.
thank you.
And my
I
wife's the
hope
same
you're
way.
I hope that you are teaching children, and I'd like to give a shout out to you faithful ladies like that. That's so encouraging.
So, with that said, I do want to move on to our last subject. I imagine last call for questions. By the way, if you're streaming, just send in a question in the chat, and we'll get to it after we get to this subject. And that is the amendment that Jared Moore wanted to offer up on pedophilia. We talked about how earlier and put a pin on this comment on the church just accepting the APA, American Psychology Association, and we're accepting, the influence of a field that's mostly influenced by Sigmund Freud. We got to be real about that. Like most of psychology is built on Sigmund Freud, even though he was wrong about just about everything. It's funny when I was watching Sopranos, and like the therapist in the show is very Freudian. And it's like, wow. And she's trying to convince the main character that he had sexual feelings for his mother and sister and all that. So it's like a very Freudian. It's like weird, but that's what this field is like. That is who influenced this field. There's a field of psychology, and you drafted a resolution to kind of tackle that. And I thought that I was like, when I was listening to you read it out loud, I'm like, why are you talking about the APA? In the second resolve or whatever, or whereas, not the resolve, and then the last resolve really just tied it together. I thought that, I'm like, okay, that's where we're going with this, because the church should stand up to the APA instead of incorporating the APA into our pop psychology students. So, Jared, can you speak to that resolution?
Yeah. So this resolution, I wanted to get at, and I wanted the messengers to hear. I'm surprised, I didn't realize I could read my resolution from the floor, or I would have done it earlier. I wouldn't have waited till like the last, 30 minutes before the convention's over. Everybody's wanting to leave. They don't want to consider anything. I could have, if I'd read a resolution against murdering puppies, they would not have wanted to bring it out and vote on it, So, I read it mainly to emphasize that sin begins in the heart at the point of inclination or desire, or any motion from original sin in our hearts is morally culpable sin. And so if we pass this resolution, you can also point out how any homosexual desire, any homosexual inclination is also morally culpable sin. But, I wanted us to condemn pedophilia at the point of attraction, at the point of the first inclination is sin that needs to be repented from. And the APA has changed the language. The American Psychiatric Association, in their DSM, which is their Bible, has argued that pedophilic desire is not a disorder, but it's only a disorder if you act on it or feel bad for it. It used to be that if you had a desire, a pedophilic desire, it was a disorder. And so they've softened the language on pedophilia, the APA has. And, back in the 70s, homosexuality was a disorder. But when the APA changed, the laws followed the APA. And the laws are going to follow the APA on pedophilia.
And so too did the church follow the APA as well.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that most Christians separate sexual desire from our biology, from God's design. They say that it's separate. That's why they say that even the term homosexual means ontology, means it's who you are, similar to heterosexual. Your sexuality is not tied to your sex. It's not tied to God's design. It's whatever you choose. You're oriented, your sexual orientation. That language is entirely outside of the Bible, outside of Scripture. There's no such thing as a sexual orientation.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that. That's, again, part of the whole psychology dictating our language.
I mean, you're oriented to everything you do. Like, I'm oriented to fried chicken, or Al
Mohler famously repented in 2014, I believe, for his position on this. But that's a rabbit trail. I mean, I wrote about that in my upcoming book, which will eventually come out. I'm just delayed on that because I got struck from YouTube. So it's like, okay, well, I can't do a whole lot of pregame for a little bit. It was William Wolf who blurted something out. Who did it? I have no.
He got you in trouble?
Yeah, he got me in trouble.
That's great.
It wasn't even me. Like, I don't get.
Man, Wolf gets everybody in trouble, man.
Yeah, I guess. So we got some questions coming in. Oh wait, hold on. Question: will you both consider running in 2024, and not just for SBC president?
They don't want
for anything, maybe.
I don't know. We'll see.
And then, if not, who do you want to run? This is from Berean Babes. You should check out her channel.
I think
I do. I like her.
I think Pastor Jeff Wright, pastor in Cookeville, Tennessee, would be a good Southern Baptist president, and that's who I would recommend.
The president we need, but not the one we deserve.
Let me tell you, if I could nominate anyone, it would be Dr. David Norman. He was Paige Patterson's last doctoral student, and he was my Baptist history and heritage professor. Now he's a pastor in San Antonio. Fine man. Very conservative.
He made a motion for 990s. I know David well.
For a motion for what?
He made a motion for 990s for
that was him.
Yeah.
And as far as me, I mean, no one really knows who I am. So I mean, look, they don't. I mean, I'm just a nobody.
Maybe you could give the nominating speech and then talk about Brokeback Church that we kicked out last year.
Let me tell you something.
So hilarious. You might get some votes.
I promise. I would love the opportunity, but I will not be given such an opportunity. So I'll make it myself. I want to bring my own microphone next year. Oh,
they have to entertain a nominating speech. They have to entertain a nominating speech. That is your opportunity.
Really?
Because one of the things that I would have loved to have seen is someone just give a nominating speech, just saying all the incompetencies that Barbara did.
I did not.
That should be in the strategy, CBN. Take some notes.
No,
spoiler candidate.
Gross. Don't. Ooh, no. I would rather drink bleach than listen to anything from them.
No, I'm saying they need to listen to me. They need to take notes from me. I'm giving them free advice
mess
here
it
on how
up.
to run a political campaign.
Bro, they would mess it up. They will bring someone like
They
Willie
would.
Rice to give it. Man, I did not know that. That is, they have to entertain that.
Yeah, if you nominate someone on the floor, they give you a 3-minute speech or whatever, however long.
Oh yeah, someone get nominated.
Now,
You
it might be
Nominate
called.
yourself. I mean, Chris, you could nominate yourself, man. You could get up there and say, "I'm the man for this job for these reasons." Because
I'm
the
not sure you're allowed to
SBC.
nominate yourself.
Oh
in
yeah, you
Robert's
can.
rules.
A guy did
Okay.
a couple years ago and won. He got second VP.
Oh, no one knows what that does.
Hey, no one
do.
even knows who I am, but I promise one thing. I would definitely, if you want things exposed, I just want things exposed. You know, oh man, I just got some good ideas. I like that. Thank you. Hey, right on, big dog.
You're welcome.
Hey, just real quick. So I gotta ask y'all some questions.
All right. Last
Who
call,
runs?
right?
Who do you think runs Doctrinal Watchdog?
I don't know the answer to that. I've never actually thought about that before.
I don't even know who Doctrinal Watchdog is.
What? Oh man,
I've used their clips multiple times.
Oh, I love their stuff. I used to think it was JD Hall, and I was supposed to go on a hunting trip with JD, and he got yeah, that was sad. But no, but as far as serving in the convention, I mean, I would. I don't think that I would be anyone's first candidate because I'm just a dude with a Bible, but I love my Lord, and I just the one thing I wanted to say at the convention, and this won't take me but just a couple seconds, but therefore, beloved, looking forward to these things, be diligent to be found in him in peace, without spot and blameless, and consider that the long suffering of our Lord is salvation, as also our beloved brother Paul, according to the wisdom given to him, has written to you, as also in all his epistles, speaking to them as these things, in which are some hard to understand, which untaught and unstable people twist to their own destruction, as they do also the rest of Scripture. But you, therefore, beloved, since you know this beforehand, beware lest you also fall from your own steadfastness, being led away with the error of the wicked, but grow in the grace and knowledge of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. To him be the glory, both now and forever. Amen. Remain steadfast. Beware. And let me tell you, the compromisers are more dangerous. I'm a fundamentalist, okay? Yes, I am a Calvinist, but I am a fundy. I'm a weird one. But beware of those that want a seat at the table of power. And that's I mean, look at you, Dr. Moore. Why not you, big dog? Man,
I think you're
a really smart
graded
man.
some people this past year. I mean, Jeff Wright, I think, is a good nominee. I just think the pieces are set in motion for Al Mohler.
Oh yeah, I think so too. But I think that I can tell you this much: we don't give anything more than like the minimum to be able to. Last year, I got up and said, friendship with the world is enmity with God. Therefore, whoever makes himself a friend of the world makes himself an enemy of God. And as for me and the church I pastor, we're done. We ain't contributed to that filth. But so we give just the bare minimum. We only get 3 messengers, and so we'll give like the $20 or whatever to Lottie Moon. I'll buy a bottle of water for Al Mohler, but it's yeah. Hey, I'm bringing some heat. If I get to a microphone, I promise I'm bringing some heat.
If you give a nominating speech, they recognize you.
I'm coming to nominate. I'm coming to nominate. But just.
I think I think you can nominate anyone. Now, you could get up there and nominate Brent Leatherwood and read off all the awful things that you think he has done.
Hey, I think just
He is exactly the type of hero man we deserve.
let me tell you what the SBC has earned. Yeah, it just point A, B, C, D.
The other thing is, you can't disparage another member. You might be ruled out of order for doing that.
Right, that's
but
true.
if you say what they do, if they say all their bad things in a positive light, you will remain in order. You know, you got to be very backhanded.
Well, actually, I don't know. I don't know if that's the case with nomination speeches. It's the case with motions and speaking to the business. But I don't know about the nominations. You need to look at the Constitution.
I think it'd be hilarious to get up there and be like, "Look, guys, I want to nominate myself."
I thought it'd be in Robert's Rules of Order and not the SBC Constitution.
But the convention sermon, and Bart Barber's sermon, they disparaged people. Like,
yeah, they did. Mike Stone, and the Mike Stone reference was pretty obvious, and then
know.
Tom Askell reference was blatantly obvious.
Yeah,
Tom Askell. I mean, come on, bro. Like, come out and swing, dude. He's just like Obama throwing a baseball. Like, what are you doing, bro? Come out there and swing on them. Man, I tell you one thing. I think it'd be hilarious. Just go up there, be like, I'd like to nominate myself. I know that I just want to get in on the getting while the getting's good. And we got the hyenas over here. They're picking at the carcass. CBN is circling. They're waiting to come in and pick at the carcass. I'm just saying, I'd like to get a little piece of the pie. So, what's up? Can I get in on the grift, or am I? I mean, let me get some action. What's up?
You got 11 months to write your speech.
Can I get my $11,000 espresso machine?
Yeah. Hey. So there was a black girl who died at Swibbits, and I tried giving her CPR right as she passed away. She was an election worker, and this was in 2020. And what they did to that girl's parents,
I remember that.
Hey, I was the one that. Hey, I don't have the time for it right now, but let me tell you what Dr. Carpenter and they told that girl's dad. It ain't. Man, it's such a long story, but what they did to her parents, I saw real clear, and that's when my eyes were really opened. Oh, I used to drink the Kool-Aid. I really did. I'm a fourth-generation Southern Baptist pastor. No organization on the planet or the history of the church has won as many souls to Christ or done as much work for missions as a Southern Baptist convention. And that is why I'm a Southern Baptist, because we do the work of the kingdom. Oh, I drank the Kool-Aid. But then whenever they treated me like the pariah, what? Yeah, y'all got a problem with me? Y'all don't want me to talk to the girl's parents? Why don't y'all want me to talk to the girl's parents? And like, I've been in the car business for years. And so I want one of these 18, 19-year-olds that were up here at the school. I know what's up. And they're trying to get me, like, oh, Chris, we really care about you. And we really just want to remove the stress. The stress? Like what? Look, if the family tries to get you to answer questions or talk, you got to remember, this was like just a couple months before, not even 2 months before George Floyd died. So you see everything that's going on. And the parents are wanting to know, why is there a man giving their daughter CPR, asking the police for an AED, and no one's trying to help him. And so they're like, yeah, we care about you. We just don't want you to talk to them. And, we just don't want to put that stress on you. Let us handle it. And then, like how I said that I've been in the car business for years, I had a friend who owns a car detailing business. And it's a legitimate, he had a contract with Tarrant County Police Department to clean out vehicles that had like urine, things like that. And And I said, hey, I need you to do me a solid, man. This girl's passed away. And she was one of the poll workers. She wasn't a student. And I said, hey, like, I need you to come up here and clean this car. I don't want her, like, 'cause she was young, like, I didn't want her, like, dad to have to come up there and have to see that. And there's blood all over, like, it was awful. I've never seen anything like it. And, like, man, and anyways, they wouldn't, yeah, it was just bad. And they told and they just convinced me, said, oh no, let the school do it. We want to minister to her. I said, are you sure? Because this dude will do it for me for free as a personal favor. Oh no, let the school do it. They call her dad a week later after it sat out in the sun for an entire week. And they said, they told him, hey, come get this car. You got 24 hours or it's going to be towed. And he said, I thought y'all were going to clean it. They said, that's not our responsibility. And so I go ask, I said, why'd y'all do that? Y'all made me look like such a jerk just now. And now the situation's even worse. And they said, Chris, well, it's a liability. And they started asking questions. And I said, tell the truth. It was never the same after that. But oh yeah, I'd love to have the opportunity.
And that's what sort of
that's what opened my eyes. Yes, sir. Yep. And so therefore, they can laugh at me. They've laughed at me the last 3 years. They can cut my microphone. I don't care. I preach the real gospel of Jesus Christ. I love the Bible. I love my congregation. And I'm clean. I've got no skeletons. I'm as boring as can be. But these people, the only people that fear examination are liars and grifters. Those in the truth, speaking the truth, they're not afraid to give an account, nor do they get mad at those that ask for an account.
All right. I think that's a good place to end off. Dr. Jared Moore, you got anything you want to add as we put a bow on this?
No, there's a lot of good. Right. Chris needs to get on Twitter.
Man, I'm not. Man, I might. I tell you what, if I be tweeting more than tweeting more than I tithe. I mean, it's just
10% tweets. So
I'll be doing the Lottie Moon tweeting, man. But hey, thanks for having me on, man. This was good. I appreciate it very much.
Yeah, thanks for
having me, brother.
Figured we'd do the sort of an autopsy play-by-play, and I think we did a lot of post-game coverage. Anyway, you can support Evangelical Dark Web, evangelicaldarkweb.org/join. That's our Patreon-like system over at there. We don't use Patreon because they censor, so we built our own, so which is doable. Anyway, that's how you can support us. Other than that, I thank these two gentlemen. You can find Jared Moore, at least on Twitter. I don't have their stuff linked in the description below because I made this before.
Jared H. Moore. Jared H. Moore. Come follow me.
And yeah, and then Chris is on YouTube in the comments. I don't know what other social, and apparently he's on Facebook, which I'm not on. So. But
yeah,
anyway,
I appreciate it, guys.
Great time having you guys on, and we'll hopefully have you on again next year or something, because there's going to be another SBC, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I promise. I promise you'll have me on next year.
You'll have to have Chris on next year because he's evidently going to make history.
I gave him an idea, and it's like
you'll see,
and
you'll see.
Theoretically, someone should have done that this year.
I didn't know I could. I'm glad. Oh, man. Beta Bart, man. I'm bringing some heat. I can't wait.
You're welcome.
Bring the heat.
Thank you.
And anyway, that's all we got for tonight. And we'll catch you on the next